always with full moon. So if you take all the full moons in the last 100 years or so, you will not see statistically a significant correlation with large earthquakes. You have to include the positions of the planets as well, and that will give you a full picture. So even with studying these very dense planetary alignment clusters, the position of the moon is always crucial or decisive.
Yeah, it seems you need to kind of just have a little bit more of an open mind here, because there's so many different factors. And if you add them together and you can kind of hold them all at once, you see how there's a larger connected, cohesive system at play. And you can start to get a little bit of a glimpse into like the inner workings of God's mind, you could say. But it's also very difficult to pin down. And I think that, honestly, a field like statistics, like that mathematical study in science, may not be able to really accurately capture this. I mean, you're talking about these clustering of conjunctions. Is this all geocentric conjunctions, or?
No. It's in 2016 I developed my own software because I realized I needed a viewpoint from every angle. So I wanted a Mercury-centric view, I wanted a Venus-centric view, a geocentric, a heliocentric, every possible, even Mars-centric. And that's very important because, for example, with the largest earthquake in 1960, the 9.5, Mars, Mercury, and Uranus were in an alignment. But you won't see that if you do a heliocentric observation, which is supported by most astrology software and maybe astronomy software as well. And you won't see it in horoscopes with astrology software. So it requires a Mars or Mercury-centric observation, calculation to see those alignments. This is really important. In 1964, with the 9.2 in Alaska, there was a quadruple conjunction again with Mars, Mercury, and Uranus, but joined by Venus in there. And then on the 28th of March, there was this 9.2. And again, you need a centric observation from Mars, Venus, or Mercury to see that. So that's really, really important. And so I developed the software to do that. And without the software, you cannot see all the significant geometry.
And so when you say conjunction, this is three planets, because we always have, of course, two planets doing something. So a conjunction in this case would be, let's say, Mercury, Venus, and Mars forming a line. So you're talking you're talking for this clustering, these specific examples, 6 of these 3 or more conjunctions occurring within like 48 hours.
Yeah, these dense clusters is that you have, not necessarily all 6 planets in one line, but 6 planetary alignments converging within 48 hours. And that's different every time, but they do something enormously on an electromagnetic level in the solar system. Like I said, they are really like magnets. It's a dynamo effect of each planet. They charge, they generate electromagnetic waves, and it's really like an atom, but on a cosmic scale, where you have electrons, and you can actually push an electron out of its orbit by exposing it to a certain voltage. This is well known. This is known over 100 years ago. So this is the same principle, but on a cosmic scale, and it's just that science has a hard time translating that from micro to cosmic levels.
That would make sense as it relates to Mercury, because Mercury could go and activate multiple alignments that are ready to go because it's moving so quickly. So that could be one reason why Mercury is a potential activator of these, because it can move from one to the other.
Yeah, it's not only because it's moving so fast, but if you look at the largest moon of Jupiter, it's larger, it has a larger diameter than Mercury. So Mercury is smaller than the largest moon of Jupiter, but the key here is that the mass, Mercury's mass, is about 45 times bigger than the largest moon of Jupiter. And it's the mass and its high orbital velocity combined that generates these huge amounts of energy. Mercury is like a laser in the solar system. On the plane of the ecliptic, when Mercury joins, for example, with the Turkey earthquake in 2023, there was a full moon on the 4th and 5th of February, but also Venus in an alignment with the Sun and Jupiter, and at the same time Mercury in alignment with the Sun and Uranus. And that happened within hours. That's a combination. And it's always this combination with Mercury and Venus combined that does the triggering. This is really interesting to see.
These clusters going back, you said that for the past 25 years, all of them have a magnitude 7 or greater earthquake associated with them. And then if you're going further back, some of them have just magnitude 6 plus earthquakes, but all of them have something significant.
Mm-hmm. Most of them. Most. I think there are 2 or 3 exceptions. There nothing really, nothing much happened.
Any dates going forward beyond 2029? Because you identified that's the next big cluster. That's probably around what, a Jupiter-Saturn opposition? Should be right around when we have Jupiter-Saturn in opposition.
I think I marked something in 2032, but I can't remember. Is it some time ago? When there's really obvious convergence going on, then I stumbled upon that accidentally. Then I marked that, and this is worth saving. And then I look back, so I know that is significant. But other than that, I don't really look far into the future, except maybe for these really big, massive earthquakes like the 8.8 and magnitude 9. They seem to be related to specific Uranus cycles. It's very interesting to see as well. In 2022, I did research on the position of Uranus with the largest earthquakes on the record, like 8.8 and larger. And we can actually go back quite a bit, like I think the late 14th century, and I was able to gather quite I don't know, 20 or 30 of them, that they know of, that those big quakes actually occurred. And I noticed that Uranus, in one line with the Sun, most of the time, like 55%, aligns with the constellation Leo. That's the star system Regulus in a broad sense. And these are the astronomical signs, not astrological, but the real physical astronomical signs in the sky. And so, based on those Uranus cycles, I estimated back in 2022 that 2024, 2025, there could be such a large earthquake, like 8.8 or larger. And it actually happened last summer. And that was a confirmation for me that the position of Uranus is crucial with these very large earthquakes. It was a confirmation. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to take a while for Uranus to get all the way to Leo, true sky, because it's 7 years per sign, and right now it's at the very beginning of Taurus.
Yeah, the end of Aries. Aries is key because Aries is a fire sign, and Sagittarius and Leo in astrology, they are fire signs. But I noticed that with all these large earthquakes, Uranus was in line with the Sun, and one of these 3 signs either conjunct or opposite. But only these 3 signs, except for 2010 and 2011, there was the end of a cycle of 3 big quakes. They were early Virgo. They just passed Leo.
Yeah, and the Earth constellations are very large. At least Virgo and Taurus are big constellations. And yeah, there's like overlap in zones to these. But yeah, I've personally found Uranus often. It's not every time, of course, but more often than not, it participates in like a weird way with the planetary geometry, and then you get something to happen. I mean, that was the case in 2023. Is that it was Uranus in alignment, and we had the full moon as well.
Mm-hmm. Uranus is a key player.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's if you look at this axis, it's almost 90 degrees tilted, flat on the plane of the ecliptic. It's exceptional. Maybe that has to do something with its unique influence on electromagnetic waves. That is almost 90 degrees. I mean, electromagnetic waves have this 90-degree property with the electric field and the magnetic field at 90 degrees. And based on my research on the moon with the electromagnetic harmonics like 45, 90, 135 degrees, that seem to have huge influence. And maybe because Uranus axis is tilted more than 80 degrees, maybe that's somehow causes this influence.
Uranus is the only planet that has that tilt, right?
Yeah, it's exceptional.
But they're very similar. So you're talking about Uranus and Neptune being on the other side.
Well, Neptune is different, and in several ways. If you look at the mathematical blueprint of the solar system, and then you touch on the Titius and Bode law, which is very interesting. I have an article on my website. If you search for Titius or Bode, there is this article about the dynamics of the solar system and also the geometry. There's no way around it. The geometry is so specific and so significant. And if you look carefully, the asteroid belt fits a planet, the Kuiper belt fits a planet, but Neptune does not. And I once read, I don't know if it's true, but I once read that the ancients from India, they actually claim that Neptune originally did not belong to our solar system. And I can actually, it makes a lot of sense because it is the only planet that doesn't fit the Titius and Bode law. All other planets do. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. But today, Neptune is definitely a key player, also with earthquakes, because I noticed that if you talk about 90 degrees and we talk about Venus does not like 90-degree angles. And I've seen back in 2022, I think for the first time, that I saw a magnitude 7 earthquake just after Venus made a 90-degree angle with the Earth and Neptune. And they almost always come in pairs. So you have within 3 days, you have like Earth making 90 degrees with Venus and Neptune, and then 2 days later, we have Venus making 90 degrees with Earth and Neptune. They always come in pairs, and that's a very powerful combination. The same goes for Mercury, Venus, and Uranus, where the same pairing, like Mercury making 90-degree angles with Venus and Uranus, and the other way around. Like Venus make the 90-degree angles with Mercury and Uranus, we can have pretty large earthquakes. And statistically, that is a confirmation there.
Yeah, so it seems there's this interesting interconnection between the inner and the outer planets. And that's also what Nelson noticed and wrote about in his book, Cosmic Patterns. I mean, the outer planets are so much further away. Neptune's at 30 astronomical units, and Earth is at 1. The sun, of course, would be at 0 in this scale. So it's like a tremendous difference in distance. But there seems to be this energy connection. And then Jupiter sits in between them. Like if you look at the solar system from that perspective, Jupiter's perfectly situated to influence the inner planets and also interact with the sun, being at 5 astronomical units. But then it's also still the closest planet to Saturn. And then Neptune and Uranus, it's, kind of almost a mediator in some aspects to the inner planets. So, if it's on the other side, then that falls apart. But it is interesting that Jupiter, the biggest planet, the largest gravitational field, happens to be at like that perfect nodal boundary point between the two.
I think that Jupiter has a very stabilizing factor in the solar system. Definitely.
Yeah. And have you noticed anything between Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune? Because yes, Jupiter has this maybe more of a commanding, stabilizing effect, but as it relates to Uranus and Neptune, Saturn is closer to them with its orbit in general.
Yeah, well, it's a combination. It is just an interesting play.
It can get closer to them, rather.
Yeah, it's an interesting play between these 4 planets. And recently I did some research on the solar cycles, which vary. There are approximately 11 years, but they vary from 9 to 14 years. And it turns out that this cycle is actually determined by the gas giants, like the Jovians. Jupiter is the most important player. It orbits less than or more than 11 years, almost 12 years, which is very close to the solar cycle. But there are variations, and they are determined by especially Uranus in particular, and to a lesser degree Saturn and Neptune.
Yeah, the Gleisberg cycle for solar activity is estimated to be like 85 to 100 years, and Uranus is at 84.
Yeah, and even if you ask AI like Grok, they actually confirmed it based on established research. And Grok even admits that the solar cycles based on the gas giants is a better match or a better fit than the NASA models that only observe and study the sun's dynamics.
And that's why, again, getting back to the beginning, it's interesting. You got like basically brought into the club, you could say, where you saw the X flares, then you saw the earthquakes, and then you saw the geometry. And we see that time and time again, where it's often all 3 simultaneously. And I just get the sense that the planets and the sun are much more connected than we think they are. And then like light photons are traveling at the speed of light. So they can hit Earth in 8.3 minutes, so Jupiter is in less than an hour. And then the other planets, it doesn't take that long for a light flux to hit them, and how that charges them up and energizes them. And I get a sense that a lot of these shifts that may result in a big event here on Earth that literally is making the streets like undulate like this, right? I do get a sense, though, that the initial trigger mechanism can actually be maybe even as soft as a whisper. And it's just enough to just set into motion the sequence of events needed.
Yes, you can be very subtle energies, indeed. And I like to think of the planets, I like to see the planets as communicating with each other. like they know what is coming, and then when geological changes are supposed to happen, it's all part of the stabilization, the stabilizing factor of the entire solar system. I often emphasize that Earth is not separated. I mean, in science, they tend to look at isolated things, and you really need to look at the bigger picture. And Earth is part of the solar system, and the other planets are. There's an interplay between them. There is a balance between them. They influence each other, and I like to think of the planets as also communicating with each other, which I think makes sense. And scientifically, you could argue that there is actually sort of an electromagnetic feedback loop from the planets back to the sun. And the same applies to the galaxy, that there is a feedback loop from the galactic center to our sun. Everything is connected.
Yeah. And what do you think about I'm 100% agreement. I mean, that's why people like my channels, because I talk about this stuff, and I think we just all just feel this. I think once you tap in, you're like, okay, I just sense that this is to some degree the truth, right? We don't know all the truth, but we just sense this greater connection, and it's resonating more and more. What do you think about, like, what are your just thoughts in general on plate tectonics and maybe some alternate ideas of plate tectonics? I mean, there's, for example, like expanding Earth hypotheses, that the Earth is just always slowly expanding. There's also the crustal displacement idea from Hapgood. I think it's Hapgood if you're aware of that. What are some of your thoughts there?
What I do know from my studies is that Earth, in the distant past, before it harbored life like we see today, was seismically extremely active and also extremely unstable. And today we are extremely lucky. Really, we are. People don't realize that, but we are extremely lucky to have this relatively big moon orbiting our planet, because the moon. I see the moon as a seismic regulator or modulator, almost, from my studies. That's the only conclusion that we can draw. And also, it helps stabilize the Earth's axis to a degree, so that the climate on Earth can be relatively stable over millions of years. But I am not convinced that the moon has always been around the Earth. At some point, it was there. And also, a thing is also very interesting, is that the moon almost precisely can cover the sun disk. It needs to be at a very precise distance from the Earth to do that. And this, for me, this is all too much of a coincidence. So if you look at the plate tectonics, we have a seismically active planet. We can have large earthquakes up to magnitude 9. But if we didn't have the moon, what would actually the Earth be like? What would be the dynamics? What would be the tectonic plates? How would they act? Maybe silent for a very long time, and then suddenly magnitude 10 or so. I don't know.
I just recently read that the earthquake that occurred in South America in 1960, 9.5, that it was actually maybe stronger, like 9.8, is that the instrument stopped being able to read the values. Have you ever heard of that? I don't. This is just someone commenting online, but I was like,
if I do research now, all the resources are very stubborn and keep it at 9.5 or 9.6 at most. But if you look at what happened there, the geometry was the earthquake occurred on the 22nd, off the top of my head, and the days before, with the critical geometry, this always happens a few days earlier, there was a sudden sequence of large earthquakes. We talk about the 9.5, but a day before, there was like an 8.1, there was like a 7.1, there was like an 8.6, there was like 6.7. Yeah, there were big quakes on starting on the 20th and 21st, all there along the same fault, and then it peaked with that 9.5, when suddenly the entire fault over 1,000-kilometer stretch then ruptured. So it's not just a 9.5. Most people, even scientists, overlook that. It was a huge event. It was a huge transformation point for the entire Earth. And if you look what happened to humanity from the 1950s into the 1960s, on a social level, everything, there was a huge transformation, a huge shift on the planet starting around 1960.
I mean, I also talk about that a lot, as the societal aspect as well. I don't think these planetary geometries always result in an earthquake. I think sometimes it's more like a social quake that happens. And so that speaks to it being a more of an energetic and perhaps even consciousness phenomena. But again, it's like you can't pin it down, it seems, super, super strongly with hard science and statistics. I mean, there is a lot out there, but the more comprehensive view seems to just require a bit more of an open mind to then grasp.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned that, because early on in my research, the biggest decision that I made was to prove that plants do have influence. Because if you look at history, there is this tension between astrologers who work intuitively, and on the other side, astronomers really looking at the hard facts. These are the difference between the left and the right brain parts, basically. And what needs to happen is they need to be combined also socially. So I like to see myself in the middle, trying to build a bridge between astrology and astronomy. And that's why I focus a lot on scientific methods, like building statistics. So to basically get the scientists more on board as far as they would like to go. Because intuitively we know that things work and we know that certain things are true, but the other side needs hard facts, and I think it is possible to build a bridge.
Yeah, and you also there's so many things floating around now, ideas and theories that are ungrounded and don't have anything verifiable beyond them. So there is a certain level of skepticism that's needed and to actually verify certain things, which is why I I I think it's really important. Like for me, for example, I'm just tracking this every single day. I'm doing my historic research, and then when we see them, like I've put out a few forecasts this past 12, 13, 14 months, going before that too, but really the past year, there's been a lot of forecasts I've put out, and then they've actually hit fairly close in terms of magnitude, location, the date. The most notable being the 8.8 megaquake. I mean, I made a video 3 days before that occurred on the 29th saying this is the highest likely area that we get a high magnitude earthquake, a megaquake, in the immediate near future. And I said it could be even greater than 8.5. So there was also a little bit of the universe working through me there. But as it relates to proving these things, I think it's really important to also be able to do it, as you could say, like in the field, where it's not just historic analysis. It's can you interpret the signs right now and then provide that forecast, and it actually turns out to be correct. And if so, that is like the ultimate proof in my mind that something works. Especially if you do it multiple times, then you can't deny it at that point. As a one-off, maybe, but it's been more than a one-off now for both myself and also yourself.
Yeah, it's like looking at electromagnetic energy. I mean, if you look at astrologers, they talk about energies, and at some point it should be possible to actually prove that. And I was curious enough to do the research and find out how it actually works, because it has. I mean, if you look, I'm a geometry guy. I like numbers, and I even studied numerology, because there is so much with numbers and geometry in the universe that. That is not fully understood, like the mechanism, things that come into creation always come into creation with in a very geometric way. There's no exception. So with earthquakes and the influence of the planets and the moon, there should be something that we can define and recognize, and to learn to recognize. And this recognition, I think, is important for both astronomers and astrologers, for everyone actually.
So what recommendation would you give to anyone that's interested in this? Because I know I personally just started up, and the way I learn best is to do the research and then also to summarize that with a video that I produce, which is turned into an educational platform. And then you started off with you had this curiosity, and you've done very similar things. Like we've done very similar things in this regard, just you've been doing it for longer. But there's not too many people talking planetary geometry out there. Like it's pretty niche. But there's a huge amount of interest in it, though. I mean, you've had videos that have gone to hundreds of thousands to million plus views. I've had the same. So there's clearly like a lot of interest there. I think some people just don't know where to start, and not everyone's going to have maybe like the brain for it, and that's fine. They can just appreciate it, just like I'm not probably going to be Van Gogh anytime soon. But for anyone that like is feeling like what, like I want to learn more about this, I want to like make significant strides forward in this field for the collective. What recommendations would you give to them? What advice? Like where should they start?
Oh, it's a difficult question. I think if you're really interested, we have software these days that can easily visualize the solar system. That is a good starting point. I did that back in 2014. I fired up a solar system scope. It's a great tool. But yeah, I think the most important thing for people is to become aware of the bigger picture, which is the solar system. I mean, we are so caught up in daily life here on Earth that we forget about the bigger picture and the planets around us. I mean, for us, these are huge distances, but on a cosmic scale, is just like a grain of sand. Our solar system, it's just a matter of perspective here. So I think it's very important that there is this awareness of the bigger picture, like raising the level of consciousness. And to do that, I think is really become aware of the existence of the planets, to look at the solar system and to see how the planets move, how they interact like a clock. That already raises our consciousness and raises the awareness to the bigger picture that we are, the dynamics that we are a part of.
Yeah, I guess it would hit different when you're starting to think about the planets and you're aware of this conjunction in the sky, for example, and then you get the news that some big event occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been hearing talk about this, conjunction, one in, let's say, 50 years happening right now. And then all of a sudden it really hits home because it's like a felt, lived experience versus it just being an abstraction from 120 years ago or something.
Yeah, I think you will always have people who are really curious, and I mean, people needs to be a curiosity somewhere. There are also people who don't want to believe it and to really think that it is all nuts and it's pseudoscience, and they are, I wouldn't say closed-minded, but they simply are not interested. So it needs to start with a certain level of interest to look, to get the news and to make the connection and to then start following the videos and then maybe do some research of your own.
Well, I wish everyone the best with that. We have two resources for anyone that watched this point. We have Frank's channel at SSGEOS on YouTube, and then your website is ssgeos.org, correct? And then also, you're already on my channel watching this, folks. So subscribe to both, and you'll stay up to date on all this, I'm sure. And yeah, Solar System Scope, I love that application. I'll link that tool also in the video description. It's Solar System Scope, and they have a free version. The paid version's also, it's like a one-time, like $15 max or something. I highly recommend it as well. We're not affiliated with them. At least I'm not affiliated with them in any way.
No, me neither. But it's cheap. It's 10 or 15 bucks something.
Yeah. So, any final closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it was great to be on the show. No, this was great. I hope that that this was educational.
Yeah, and we'll keep tracking what's happening in the sky for everybody. I'll look into 2029 and 2032. We have a Saturn-Uranus conjunction, so that's already a key date. I know we have this Jupiter-Saturn opposition in 2030 around that time because we had the conjunction 2020. That's a 20-year cycle. So quite a lot of activity for the next few years ahead of us, as there always is. But they do seem to come in clusters as well. We just went through a big conjunction cluster because of Jupiter being so fast and hitting all the outer planets, and they're in this harmonic configuration right now. So hopefully it all works out. And thank you, Frank, for jumping on and for sharing some of your wisdom with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.